Next, we have a panel providing freedom and transparency to mass media. Our moderator is Martine Paris, tech reporter for the FinTech Times and blockchain gamer. The panelists will be Rachel Wolfson, blockchain journalist for Forbes and The Merkle, the Entrepreneur Magazine's influential woman in blockchain. Welcome, Rachel. And then Jordan French, angel investor, multimedia tech journalist, and on the editorial staff at TheStreet.com. Welcome, Jordan. Christopher Green, founder of alternative media, television, and Bitcoin-rich media personality featured on CNN, Fox News, and Russia Today. Welcome, Christopher. Avicha Simatovich, media tech expert, co-founder of the Further Software and Media House Company, co-founder of Blockchain Guys. Welcome, Avicha. RJ Smith, founder and CEO, CTO of Redpin, member board of directors at Messy Labs Global. Welcome, RJ. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Martine Paris. I'm a tech reporter at the FinTech Times, Blockchain Gamer, and Geekazine. And today, we are talking about freedom and transparency in mass media. Panelists, tell me, what does that mean to you? Rachel?
I think that in this industry, you've really got to be selective about what you write about. And for me, the transparency there is, I cover topics I'm interested in, and I'm very passionate about the fact that I don't cover ICOs. I'm not interested in them, but I will cover topics that I'm interested in, and I think.
I'm sorry, I actually meant to begin with RJ, because RJ, tell us a little bit about what you do. And
Sure. I'm the CEO of a company called Redpin. We process and organize and summarize news and social media to capture what the world thinks about the news, and we really want to highlight reputation and bias in doing that. And so we think freeing information on the internet starts with bringing accountability to the information and the flow of information. So where does content get created? Who are the people who are distributing that content? What's their reputations? What's their bias? And how do we hold them accountable? We think that technology like blockchain can change the way accountability on the internet is actually going to move forward. I've said for years, when you come out to Las Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays on Facebook. In the reality now with blockchain is when you store information on a ledger, it's going to be there forever. And so we think that brings a level of accountability that's going to change the internet.
Great, yeah. So the reason why I said I wanted to start with RJ is because on our panel today, we have traditional journalists. Rachel's from Forbes and Jordan's from The Street. But Jordan also has an alternative media venture, as well as the rest of the guys on the panel. And so I think what we'll do is we'll go backwards on the panel for this question, because Ivica, you have thoughts on this as well in terms of how blockchain is going to democratize news and free information.
Yeah, my experience in building a global blockchain company, like back in the days, was Game Credits and similar, and trying to define how critically important flow of information is between the company itself by bringing the vision out. Because what blockchain also brought, it brought a very narrow distinction between who is the audience, who is the community. Community is, in this case, direct investors. And in that sense, the importance of articulating the right message, definitely reputation management becomes a crucial point in bringing the information out.
Tell us a little bit about your company.
So at the moment, my company is a Blockchain Guys. We are a consulting company. We have a lot of experience in trying to define how the new economies will be built and where is this new space. And we are challenged by new frontiers, and we love to be always on the front line. So it's basically consulting company. We try to help people find themselves in the blockchain either by adoption, integration, or building something new.
Great. And Christopher Green, so you have AMTV as well as Bitcoin Rich. You're coming at this from somebody who's been in journalism for a while. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on how blockchain is going to revolutionize the news business and free information.
Yeah, well, I think it's revolutionizing things now. I've been in business for over 10 years, and I started my platform, AMTV, Alternative Media Television, from a bedroom. We've since grown it organically, virally, without spending a single dollar, these are $2 bills, by the way, in marketing, ever. So it's completely organic. I am living proof of a voice that literally came out of nowhere as a result of the beauty of the internet. Now, things have changed so much. What you see and read online is now being dictated to the viewer. Let me give you an example. I put out over 10,000 videos over the last decade. We reached over 100 million views around the world. I have over 500,000 subscribers that tune in on a daily basis. We are not allowed to monetize any of our content because they do not like, a lot of the times, the color of our speech. We are not allowed by Facebook, Google, to advertise cryptocurrency or blockchain videos because they've banned it. But at the same time, and we'll get into this, Facebook might very well buy Coinbase. There's speculation this is actually happening. If you listen to Mark Zuckerberg, for example, he's spending billions of dollars in blockchain tech, while at the same time they're censoring alternative voices. I also am the founder and creator of BitcoinRich.com, which is an online platform. It's an educational platform that evangelizes this technology to the world, which I really think is misunderstood. And I just don't think people get it, and so they need to learn about it. And my primary interest isn't making money, although I am an investor, and those are some fringe benefits. It's great to participate in this revolution, but I'm a big believer in free speech. Everybody should have a voice in this country, should be able to speak without restriction. If you don't like my speech, or his speech, or her speech, that's a good thing. That's what free press is. I don't want to take up too much time, but there's an argument where people will say things like, these are private companies. No, they're not. They're front companies for the US government. Okay, I've interviewed these people like Eric Schmidt, former chairman, board of directors of Alphabet. What does he do now? He is the chairman of the Department of Defense Innovation Board, working on top secret projects like Project Maven in AI. And what do you think they do? They censor the internet. They build autonomous drones that mass murder all across the globe. And these are very big, emotional, passionate things that we're covering. And I've met these people face to face. I asked them about fake news. He said, Christopher, fake news is a real problem. And you know what they did? When Donald Trump won the election in 2016, in November, they changed their algorithm. All of a sudden, we wouldn't see us in the recommended feeds anymore. A lot of our blockchain content wasn't getting out to the same amount of people. Why? Why are they censoring? I thought this was a free country. It doesn't seem so free. I think I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, and on our panel call, it's very interesting. We were talking about a couple of libertarian concepts. And I know, Jordan, and I know you want to respond to that, you also have your thoughts on censorship and self-censorship in media. So feel free to respond to Christopher and give us your thoughts on what freedom and transparency in media means to you.
Sure, I have a few, and thanks for that, Martine. I guess, Chris, first, congrats on your success with your operation. I think there's an equal argument, though, to be made. Eric Schmidt ran a private company. They can make decisions on their own about what they want to or don't want to advertise on there. It's a fair point. I'm not saying that it's mine, but they should be able to make that choice, too. I think just topically, though, blockchain's done wonders, and cryptocurrency's done wonders for media. In fact, it's been such a boon. A lot of media doesn't really know how to handle it. Just to give you a few statistics, at a few publications, Forbes among them, I know that a huge percentage, actually, of their traffic in recent months has come from blockchain-related articles, cryptocurrency-related articles. Sometimes, if you look at a leaderboard, actually, of writing staff, and the page views that they're getting, consistently the folks who are writing on this industry, if they're writing for a technology publication or a financial publication, have started to drown out the traffic that's elsewhere. So I can speak from my own experience. I'm on an editorial staff at thestreet.com. A lot of you know that from looking up stock ticker symbols, or from Jim Cramer, who was a co-founder of Mad Money fame. And traditionally, covered a lot of equity markets and got a lot of respect from that. And coverage of cryptocurrency, though, is almost started to dominate in some cases when there's a lot of news on a given day. The facts are that there's a lot of traders in Bitcoin markets, Bitcoin future markets, and cryptocurrency. A lot of people generally interested in these as financial markets. So one thing is that they're certainly here to stay. I think a second thing, though, that's happened that's interesting with the media industry is typical in any new technology or industry, I should say, a whole crop of industry media as a cottage industry kind of bubbles around it. That in particular has its own set of issues, which hopefully we can unpack here. One of the unspoken things for blockchain media is there's a lot of pay to play out there. In the long run, that's going to be a big problem when you're paying off basically journalists or publications to write about your company, write about your ICO, or otherwise marshal forward what is effectively native advertising, which is otherwise somewhat very common. Rather, it's called advertising. Except the difference is it needs to be disclosed. Just from a legal standpoint, number one, it's illegal to write about a product or service, receive money for it in most jurisdictions, and not disclose that. Number two, it devalues a lot of the integrity. So a lot of the things that people have been whispering about, but not speaking about openly, and we'll do that here, is that a lot of the publications in this industry we don't trust because of their pay-to-play nature, coupled with the failure to disclose. So plenty we can cover. Martine, back to you.
Yeah, no, that's great. We had a panel call before we came out to Vegas, and we were talking about the stories that we're following, and one of the most exciting points in our discussion was when we started talking about these evolving blockchain ecosystems around the world, and several of us on the panel have been traveling the world this summer, and I thought it would be interesting for the audience to hear, what are the stories that you're following? I didn't get to see you for 3 months. Rachel spent the entire summer in Europe and all over the place in the Caribbean. So tell us about what are some of the places you travel to, and what are the things that you're really excited about? What stories are you following through the fall?
Yeah, definitely. So I was gone for a very long time. I was all over Europe. I was at Blockshow in Berlin also. But one of the most exciting places that I went to was Malta. And I was there at the time when the blockchain laws got passed into bills. And I was sitting in Parliament. Bills got passed into laws, sorry. I was sitting in Parliament when that happened. And I spoke with Silvio, the guy who implemented them. And I just think that there's so much innovation going on in Malta, and to see that as a journalist and to speak with the people there innovating and creating these regulations, I mean, it's fascinating. And so obviously that's definitely a story that I covered for Forbes. I wrote about Silvio's interview, and it's one of the most interesting places I've been to. So in terms of press coverage and things that I'm interested in, that's definitely high on my list, regulations and what's going on in innovative countries like Malta. I mean, I'm back in America now, and there's really, for me, I'm not so excited, honestly. There's, I want to go back to Malta and cover more what's going on there, so.
Yeah, and she wrote some great articles on it too. You can find on Forbes. And also, Jordan, you just came back from Blockchain Week Korea, right? And tell us a little bit about your travels this summer.
Yeah, you do this stuff for a while, and it pushes you out there, right? Like a lot of us up on stage, we end up speaking at or moderating panels at conferences like Martine is doing. Martine's a journalist too, and you get taken all over the world, and it's pretty interesting. In particular, in this industry, it's everyone says tech is global, blockchain is like hyper global. There's a lot going on everywhere, even kind of these otherwise what appear like corners of the world. Gibraltar's another one besides Malta. and very, very active community. So narrowly, I'll speak to my experiences in Asia. I was in July in Seoul for Black Week Korea. Got to spend some time with Galaxy IP's Mike Novogratz. First thing he said to me when we were talking after he came off stage was, "This is really exciting. This is really exciting because there's a lot of energy here, and Korea is a fascinating market for this. That's right now looking to be quite contrasted from what you're seeing in the U.S. And what you're seeing elsewhere. What appears to be going on is some development of the financial markets, especially from the investor pull side, where there's a lot less what maybe Chris might call suppression. How's that for word choice on the media side, on the investment side, regulation. In other words, there's a lot more support in a few of these jurisdictions, and that will be a watershed moment in the future in the sense that chicken will come home to roost either in a very bad way because a lot of people lose a lot of money, or we'll see a lot of innovation where, that water, so to speak, can flow a lot faster. Certainly the investor community is much more active in Seoul where it was, Hong Kong for sure, Singapore. It's a lot more excitement about investing in these projects, and the money is there much more so to line it up. One consequence of that, though, that we can talk to is where there is money, that's where the talent goes. And so what a lot of the Pacific Rim countries are doing, whether they intend to or not, is by pooling and funding a lot of these projects, sometimes in a very big way, they're also pulling a lot of the technological capacity and assets there. So you're seeing a recentering in some ways of the technology and innovation pendulum to be a little bit closer to the east, to Singapore, Seoul, Hong Kong, and others that kind of line up in that stack. And like I said, it remains to be seen what the long-term consequences of that are, but that center of gravity movement away from Silicon Valley could be a concern if blockchain does turn out to be this somewhat ubiquitous technology that we all use, and a lot of people get richer from it, and at least stateside to some degree, we won't be participating in that wealth creation.
I mean, Christopher, you have thoughts on, what the U.S. is doing to drive all this business away. Do you want to share with us what you were talking about?
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
What the U.S. is doing to drive all this business away.
I just think it's funny. I mean, the U.S., I view it as the most restrictive country in the world when it comes to innovation, entrepreneurship, and why we are all here, blockchain tech. I mean, it's amazing. Most of the companies and businesses, projects we work with are all overseas because they can't operate here. And I think we also need to understand, too, this is the Wild West. Okay, this is what innovation is. A lot of these projects, ideas are going to fail. Why are we caught up with playing by the rules? If we were playing by the rules, Bitcoin wouldn't exist. This is a counterpoint to the traditional banking, archaic, dying, dinosaur, fraudulent, too big to fail bailout model that robbed and ripped all of us off in 2008 and 09. I know so because I worked for Merrill Lynch. I'm a banker, okay, and I got into media because I was pissed off. And I could also see the future. This is the future. Just like the internet was the future of where we are at today. I remember when people laughed when I told them I did social media. They'd cackle in the background. What a loser. We've since grown our company and have had astounding success. I meet people all around the world. I fly all over the world. It's incredible. They're saying the same thing about this tech today. And so I think it's going to take a while before it's fully adopted. I think people focus way too much on the price because we're all human, and it's human nature, fear, greed, sex. I mean, these are things that motivate us as human beings. So I try not to focus on the price, although that usually is the headline story. I try to focus on the underlying technology and also be willing to fail. Willing to mess up, come up with a crazy idea. Maybe it's a crazy project. That's great. If investors like myself are willing to back it, then maybe something good can come from it. We can learn from our failures. Why are we so scared? And why are we trying to regulate everything so much? Why are we trying to play by these restrictive rules now? It's still early. It's the first inning. Let's keep going with the tech that has created this amazing technology that is globalizing the world and giving everybody here in the audience, including myself, monetary sovereignty over my own wealth, complete control, complete transparency. That is an unbelievable gift to humanity, and we should honor whatever that vision is.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, Bitcoin has brought a lot of changes. Now, everything is proposed value, so we all agreed to something, how much it's going to cost. And Bitcoin wouldn't hit last year almost 20,000 if we didn't decide to do that. Now, on the other hand, opportunity doesn't really pick where is the best territory. Original digital cash case study was released here as a response to the financial crisis. So Bitcoin is, in some sense, the remedy for something like that. Now, the fact of application, yes, I would agree with you, because in my own experience, application of blockchain as a technology is far, far easier to do in less developed countries. Why? Because they have less of the bureaucracy, less of protocols, less of rules, where something like this as a new opportunity can be much, much more adapted and easier translated and articulated as something beneficial for that space. Now, where it's all going, it's going to a consensus on a leverage of a proposed value within specific industry. Every industry is going to pop up with the best proposed smart contracts, best proposed business adoption, and that will become the next move to. Bitcoin was just a test pilot. It showed us that the model works. It proved that investment can be done on a community-based scale, and it proved in a massive way that nobody expected. Years ago, when I was looking for a simple coin market cap, and the amount of user was around 200,000 monthly visitors, and then a year later is like 125 million. So that's a dramatical range of use. Application, we have to come to very simple beneficial, where each one of us can feel in a pocket, oh, I saved something by using this coin, whatever his name is. And that's the future of it.
Thank you. RJ, you have traveled to the Caribbean and had a lot of comments on what they're doing in terms of fostering blockchain economies there. You want to share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. In the last 6 months, a lot of travel down to the Caribbean, places like Cayman Islands that has such a high bar to operate. A lot of people talk about the start of a company in places in, I think, Malta and Switzerland have been amazing to help and shape regulations for companies to operate post-start, which I think is equally as important as anything. But one of the, I think, locations that have been fun to watch in the last 4 months specifically has been Bermuda. Just amazing innovation, driving the foundation of the country's ecosystem as a starting point with banking and on the side of regulation being pro-blockchain, just amazing to watch.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so I see we're running a little down on time. I know most of you are sitting here, it's the end of the day, because there are journalists on the panel and you want to pitch your company for coverage. So that's typically the case with a press panel. So let me ask Jordan and Rachel your thoughts on what are the best ways for blockchain companies to pitch you, and how are you vetting ICOs? Because I'm sure you're seeing a million of ICO pitches. Rachel, why don't you start?
Yeah, so first off, I want to make a point. I think that journalism at its finest, I mean, I really understood this when I was in Malta, because I was there front and center watching innovation happen, right there in front of my face. And that's what I consider to be journalism at its finest. And I wrote about that, and I was so happy. I had great quotes from people. I was the first journalist, I think, to have the story on Malta. I was the only journalist in Parliament. So, I mean, that's what I consider true, authentic journalism. And I was super excited. In terms of PR firms or companies pitching me, I'm super selective. I don't write about ICOs anymore. I've been writing about the space for a few years, and I did write about ICOs to begin with, but I learned that, you know, a lot of these are not legit, and I was embarrassed, you know, some of the stuff I wrote about, I was like, oh my gosh, so I just completely stopped writing about ICOs. If anybody talks about their ICO with me, I get super, you know, I either just walk away, I ignore them, I don't care about your ICO, and I won't write about it. But I write about things that I'm interested in. So right now I'm interested in security tokens. I'm interested in security token offerings. I'm interested in regulations. I get press releases sometimes from my editor at Forbes, and I'll cover that because I know that he's sending me good press releases and good things to cover. But if someone tries pitching me, I really have to like them and have a relationship with them and find them interesting to write about what they're pitching me, because I'm super selective. I don't even respond to a lot of my emails. So I think I just have to be interested personally, and if it's, you know, security tokens, regulations, all of that, like the new things coming up, that's what I want to write about. So.
And Jordan, you have a very interesting approach, because I remember like just a month ago you said, the scammier the better, send me all your ICO pitches.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I'll cover ICOs. I have in the past. I guess it starts with the function of media, right? I mean, at least as it's designed or supposed to be, as an ideal. And a lot of media sees itself as a watchdog, right? Like there's some sort of a public function to that, and that's a lot of the legacy players in this space. You know, kind of like the CNN, Wall Street Journal. At least at stateside, there's an American audience, but there's a lot of great publications around the world that serve that function. In fact, there's very little to do with blockchain. There's actually a study out there recently. It's about local newspapers, local news publications, and when those disappear, the kind of recordable kind of instances of corruption in local government actually tends to rise. So certainly you can see where that merit is. The other function, of course, is news, right? And like, what is news? We got one example from Rachel, but news is where something is new, right, by definition, but also from largely the academic journalism teaching community that's been propagated by what is largely the editor staff at a lot of publications. They're trained to look for certain things. It explains why, for the longest time, TechCrunch has turned into this kind of, you know, yearbook of startup fundraises, right? And for a little bit of time, they were covering other types of fundraising, of which ICOs might be bucketed in that. But that comes from editor decisions, how they're trained, what they see. Ultimately, it's a business, right? Outside of that public watchdog function. On the news side, it's a business. So there's a lot going on there, right? And so let's unpack that a bit. From my perspective, for an ICO that raises some money, you know, that might be news, but the audience size might not be very large. Now, if there are fraud claims lobbed by a regulatory body against it, or there's a celebrity who's been involved, like a piece I wrote on, we'll make it really, really local, Floyd Money Mayweather, you know, that's really interesting, right, from an editor standpoint, because there's a huge audience there. There's a few audiences. One is the Floyd Mayweather audience. Oh, what's he up to? Second is that tie to this project. So you have to be really careful, right? If you're looking for coverage, you know, sure, you're gonna get it. But if you're looking for positive coverage specifically, there's certainly a reticence and really not much of a market, I should say, on the editorial side at mainstream financial technology, other publications in general, just because the audience isn't necessarily there, except for where there's something bad that happens. And again, that plays into what I opened with, which is the watchdog function. And then second, the news function, because the audience is there. You know, I did found Block Telegraph in this space. We've been, you know, with Pat Cahill, the former news desk editor at Futurism. We're covering a lot more there, Martine, just kind of in the industry, because one other thing we can talk about for sure is it explains a lot about the U.S. market in general. Chris, I wouldn't necessarily say this is the most restrictive jurisdiction. It's up there, and there are certain mandates. But as it relates to this particular question and this topic, media is conflicted out. So one just really relevant example, we've all seen the disclaimers on, I think it's NBC News and all of their properties about their ownership with General Electric. Well, a lot of these properties are owned by bigger companies. Some of them are publicly traded. And a lot of financial media in the U.S., in particular also in Europe, their advertisers are financial companies. They're big banks. So there's a very real, maybe I'll go so far as a chilling effect, Martine. It's certainly a factor that there's potential competition on the horizon. This is stuff that we don't necessarily want to cover in a really positive way when it's going to compete with our current advertisers.
Yeah, that's so crazy. I mean, our news really, there is censorship. I'm always surprised when I come across it, and there's self-censorship too.
Yeah, and just to weigh in real quick,
Yeah.
I don't think the media is the watchdog. I think the people are. And, I'm kind of an outlier, so I respect where everybody comes from different places, but you need to be smart enough to think for yourself. Like, look, CNN isn't there. MSNBC and Fox News are not there to tell me what the news is and tell me what to think. I'm supposed to think for myself, judge reality for what it is. So, this is just my viewpoint because, again, I'm kind of outside of the box. But, I mean, to your point, like, what is news? I remember when I started reporting and editorializing news, people told me, you can't do that. I said, well, why not? It's entertaining. People like it. And now that's what everybody does. All news is editorial. In fact, Fox News, MSNBC, CNN do that too now. Everything is subjective, at least in my view. We need to think for ourselves. I don't know, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And also, I mean, people pitch to you directly, right? Because you have original content, right? I mean, so
yeah. So
again,
I view ICOs as a good thing. Like, a lot of them are going to fail. That's just a process of this. What's happening? We need that. We need people taking risks. We need investment capital flowing into these ideas, even if some of them are bad. It's a part of the process and kind of a survival of the fittest, so that we can take things to the next level and grow the ecosystem.
Christopher, how do you vet the ICOs? I mean, do you only write about offerings that the principals or know the backers, or I mean, how do you make sure that you're not being lulled into some sort of like pump and dump, scam?
Well, you never really know entirely. I'm not necessarily saying invest in this. Think for yourself. If you think this is a good project, first of all, less than 1% of all the projects that approach us ever reaches my desk. Okay, we dump them because I don't think they're good projects, or I think they're outright scams. I'm thinking about your question. Could you re-ask it again? I lost the point.
It's okay. I mean, we're running down on time, and
How do you feel them? We
Oh no, I look for use cases. Obviously, like look for an actual product. Like if an ICO doesn't have a product and it's just an idea, that's a weaker project. That can be a good project though. Bitcoin was an idea. It didn't have something built yet when it started. But go ahead. Yeah.
But to get the review, did they have to pay you in order to get a review, or no?
Well, I don't disclose that publicly. I mean, that's proprietary. Most of the projects that I review, or news, or media, I report on because I'm interested in it. Right. I just do what I want as a media personality, and entertainer.
And that's I mean, that's a little bit of the trouble with saying, to an audience, like, think for yourself. I mean, it begs the question then, why read?
I think you should disclose. When we disclose it.
I mean, it's the law. You have to disclose. Yeah. For those of you in the audience that don't realize, if anybody asks you for money for a post, they have to put #ad if it's social media, or they have to disclose that they receive payment. Journalists, I can't take any payment for anything I post, and Rachel can't either for Forbes. So, I mean, and neither can Jordan for The Street. So, you have to just understand that there are some outlets where you can pay and get sponsored content or whatever, but they are obligated by law to disclose.
You can pay Google, ICO, if they're able to beat the system for example, because they're censoring a lot of this stuff, but you can buy advertising on AdSense all day long. Coinbase does it all these, a lot of ICOs do it. So Google's accepting money. Honestly, let's look at them.
Cointelegraph, you can either have editorial side or you can have sponsored content too. So there's a lot of opportunities to get coverage for your project if mainstream media can't pick it up. Actually, we have 1 minute left, 59 seconds left. I know Rachel wants to throw the answer box to the audience, but we do have one more question. So I think we're going to end with the box throwing out.
Basketball player.
But hey, so guys, very quickly, lightning round. Where are we heading with all of this? What's going to be the next big story that drives traffic? Is it going to be Bitcoin's back at 20K by holiday? Is it going to be Facebook's bought Coinbase? What's going to be our Thanksgiving run-up that's just going to drive views for all of us for our articles? Rachel, go.
So the next big story that I hope to be covering will have something to do with security tokens and security token offerings and regulations and innovation actually happening in the United States. I really would love to cover something like that.
All right. Jordan.
Yeah, there's a few. I think the consumer adoption story hasn't really kind of been teased out fully. On the market side, though, there's definitely interest in cryptocurrency prices has not waned. So there's a lot of catalysts on the horizon. One is mass introduction. I know a lot of you might have heard Van Eck try to introduce a exchange traded fund. That failed. That has another go at it on September 30th. That's another one right on the horizon.
All right.
Mergers and acquisitions, we could see something like Facebook buys Coinbase, something like that. You'll see the traditional model merge, buy out, acquire, while at the same time they're attempting to censor it. Absolutely.
Yeah, watch for
they don't like competition.
Ivica. What's going to drive the news this year, at the end of the year?
So, I personally see a big opportunity now in integration of blockchain, AI, and IoT.
Yeah, definitely.
For me, that's critical. There's a huge industry built in IoT, standby, not credibly used because there's still no cognitive communication. There is no direct access to that it kind of has this human touch.
Yeah.
So I feel like that AI, especially general AI, could play a big role in connecting these two things.
100%. I follow it very closely. I agree. And last word, RJ, before Rachel throws the box.
She really wants to throw the box.
She's going to throw the box.
I think there's two. The first is the public reporting that we may see in blockchain investment by the enterprise. It may not be by the end of the year, but I think it's coming. And then the second is the consumerization, where millions of people are using a product or a solution, and you're going to hear that it was powered by blockchain.
Thank you so much to my panel. We're out of time. We don't have questions for on stage, but she's going to throw the box, and we'll answer questions when we get off stage. Go. Yay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Jump there. Are you going to ask a question?
Only if this thing will turn on. Cool. It was just turned off
They
for a
give us
second.
time. Sure. Go ahead.
One question.
All right, the only question I have is, when will the institutional world really realize that they do not control the whole world and all its people? Right.
I think.
Wrong. You're wrong. This is the time.
Okay, they actually answered that on an earlier panel, the Wall Street panel. I think it's time to go to cocktails because the Cointelegraph people need to come back on stage.
That was a rhetorical question.
It is a great way to end it.
No,
Thank you.
I don't mind hearing all of your responses for this. When do you think that time will ever come? This guy pitched his idea. He said it'll never come.
They've already realized. Honestly, they're terrified. Come on, they don't like competition. The banks are terrified. They absolutely know this is the future. Are you kidding me? This is where all the money's going. All my friends in banking, Wall Street, they've all left. They work on freaking ICO projects now, and they're building the future of tech. It's where the money is. It's where the future is. They all know. Everybody knows. They just don't like competition. So it's going to happen. Guaranteed. Guaranteed.
I can say the cat is out of the bag.
And there is plenty of time for networking after the panel closes.
But it's early. You have to understand, it's early.
Gonna happen.
You have to be patient.
Okay, thank you,
You have
everybody.
to go back how long it took for internet to come and be recognized as a viable concept that we can't live now without. So this is a different one. What internet was for information, blockchain is for value.